All right, good afternoon. Apologies, guys. Lost myself for a minute there. I've got so many screens up and running. I got confused for a minute. Anyway, hope everyone's well. This is the news that we've all been waiting for, whether this was going to be delivered in a timely fashion once Liz Trust got into office. And she has been good to her word. She has announced this as quickly as possible. So, what I want to do is I want to talk through what's actually been announced today, if you haven't already caught up with some of this stuff, then maybe offer some of my own views on this as well. Um, I think that this is 100% necessary and it's needed 100%. For the last good few months, we've been talking about the fact that if this continues, we're already seeing people who can't afford to pay their bills. And as we enter into the winter months, it's just going to push people further into, fuel poverty and potentially even worse from a societal point of view. So, what's been announced today? So, the package that's been announced is essentially going to be an intervention via the government where essentially typical household bills are going to be capped at £2,500. Now, it's important to state that obviously the price cap is completely dependent. It isn't a cap on how much you're going to pay as per your household, but it is a cap on the maximum amount that the energy companies can charge you for your units of energy. So, for a typical household, what they're saying is it should cap your annual bill at £2,500. Now let's be completely honest and just have a look at the world as it currently is. If you go back 12 months to this time last year, obviously prices were so much cheaper by the tune of about £1,200. But we are where we are right now. I think the cap at the moment, what's been announced in October, will take us up to 1,971, around about there. Okay, so what this is doing is we've already been talking about the fact that in January there's potentially going to be another price cap, and I spoke about Goldman Sachs forecast saying that inflation was going to be in the 22%, 23% next year, dependent on a number of assumptions they were making based on the data. And the data there suggested that you would basically see another 80% increase in January. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about any of that now because of what's been announced. So the package is for £100 billion. Now, how this is going to work is essentially is going to fund the increase in the prices of gas, and that's going to be paid to the energy companies. So we'll pay the maximum 2,500 pounds, but anything above that is what's going to be funded using the 100 billion. So when you look at the numbers, the reports are saying that actually per household is going to cost the nation, well, us taxpayers, government, about 40 billion pounds every year. So this is going to work for 2 years. So maximum they're saying is 100 billion. I put 150 billion on the thumbnail here because what they're suggesting is it could be higher than that because of the volatility in the energy prices on the wholesale market. So we might see that actually ends up costing up to 150 billion pounds when all is said over the next 2 years. Now there are some important points perhaps to address, right? And this is the first one. And I know I've got a friend of mine who I was speaking to about this day before yesterday. Okay, so what's happened if you've already fixed your energy prices, right? So you thought, I don't want my energy prices going to, 300, £400 a month. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go fix, and maybe you fix with maybe like an Octopus Energy, for example. Now, the early indications are that you are going to be able to get out of your fixed and you'll be able to move without any penalty. So if you fix with Octopus, for example, and you've seen that your energy prices for the year was going to be around about £3,000, these companies are not going to be allowed to charge you more than the 2,500 cap that this piece of legislation, if you will, is going to dictate is the maximum typical households pay over the next 2 years. So what you would need to do is you would need to contact your provider and you need to say, look, you want to get out of the deal. So you're basically breaking the contract. They can't charge you an exit penalty. And what you'll essentially be looking to do is to get onto the government subsidized scheme. That is the advice currently. Now, one thing that hasn't really been announced, which I think a lot of people will be disappointed at, is what happens for business. Well, what they did say was that if you were in a school, I think it was hospitals, you would basically see energy prices frozen for 6 months. And this is probably where there's a little bit of disappointment. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing more and more news, certainly on social media now, of companies seeing their energy prices increase dramatically. And nothing really has been put out specifically to help them. I think there needs to be more done on that side, because the simple fact is, if you've got businesses going out of business and essentially letting people go, then that adds to the equation of unemployment and then potential GDP and then potential recession, so on and so forth. I think the biggest concern for the government has been the impact on households. And this is what this intervention essentially addresses. We need to see more on business, though, I believe. And it will be interesting to see whether there will be something else that will come along, maybe in the autumn budget, that will address this issue for businesses specifically. Now, what does it actually say for inflation? I've been talking about inflation and the fact that, the Bank of England base rate rises haven't helped whatsoever, purely because when you look at the inflation data, the core element that has been pushing up energy prices has inflation has been energy prices. Well, it is predicted by a lot of analysts that essentially this intervention today is going to reduce inflation by about 5%. So the last check last month, the inflation was about 10.1%. This will see inflation reduced to about 8% overall, which is going to be good news, especially if you've got money in a savings account. You're going to see the erosion effect of inflation take a little bit less of an impact on your cash, on your savings. The next question is going to be: will we see further intervention from the Bank of England to further reduce inflation using monetary policy? Whether or not it will work, potentially it has the ability to work now, because we've certainly eliminated the energy crisis part of that equation for the next 2 years. So it will be interesting to see at the next Monetary Policy Committee what happens on that part. I think from an overall insight into this, I think it is good news. With that being said, though, I'm seeing today, and this is where I might actually get a little bit controversial, right? But I am seeing a lot today, from the political side, it's posturing and it's, this was Labour's idea and blah, 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 right? At the end of the day, something has been done to help people. So maybe we need to give Labour a little bit of credit. I don't care. It's been done. We've got some help now. And I think that's the most important thing, the thing that we need to take away from this. People are still having this little argument about windfall tax. And I think Liz has spoken about the fact that she doesn't believe in windfall taxes. And I can completely see the reason why she doesn't want to impose another windfall tax. Her fear is that it will discourage investment, which we talk about investments here on this channel. It will. How would you invest in a company who is making money, but you understand that that company is going to be taxed even more on the profits, therefore reducing your return as an investor? If you're thinking about it from a purely logical point of view as an investor, the answer to that question is no. So I get what she's talking about when she says she doesn't agree with a windfall tax. She didn't want to impose a further windfall tax. There is the conversation of the moral thing to do, which I guess is what Keir Starmer and all that kind of people are talking about now, that it's been funded via debt. And this is the big thing. This 100 to 150 billion pounds is funded via debt. We don't have this money in the bank. So essentially, this is going to have to be paid back by future generations and through taxation. Now, the taxation piece is interesting, right? Because we get to the arguments of, well, how will this taxation actually work? Is it the fairest way to do that? If you look at it from a very, very high level, you could argue, there is an argument to say that actually it's better for it to be paid via taxation, right? Because ultimately, if you pay it by taxation, it will work through the brackets, so it becomes progressive. Energy prices don't increase the better you do in life or the more you actually earn. If anything, energy prices increase, and if you earn really, really well, you continue to make more money, actually becomes cheaper when you really look at it from a very high level point of view. Taxation can work because if you're in the basic rate tax bracket, 20%, well, you'll pay a little bit more for that bracket. If you're up in the additional and higher rate tax brackets, then you're going to be paying more up there. So there is an argument to say that it will work in taxation. I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Is it the right thing to do? I don't know that there is going to be a perfect solution, and there ever was going to be a perfect solution to this conundrum. I mean, it's almost impossible, really, to navigate this with 100% certainty that you're doing the right thing for every single person in the country. This is essentially a government subsidy, which is first and foremost easier to execute than if you went through the benefit systems and tried to use the various mechanisms you have there and really trying to delve into the demographics of trying to get it right in detail. That will take time. People will complain that it's already taken enough time. So I think for what we have right now is not the perfect solution, but it solves the problem. Unfortunately, people are going to have to pay for this later on down the line, and that is future generations. The big question here is, after the 2 year ends, what happens? What happens if energy prices continue to rise over the 2 years? We're capped. Are we then in a position where actually the energy companies will be free just to hike up those prices because they've been well, I wouldn't say burdened with a cap because the government is paying it. We're paying it as taxpayers. But what happens after the 2 years? I think that's something we have to deal with when we get there. And I've been speaking to one of my mates today who's South African. I speak to a lot of people who come from a similar background to me, who have lived in different countries where this type of stuff, it doesn't happen. You don't normally get government intervention in this kind of scope. And I do want to share this with you because for the longest time and for years and years and years and years and years, you hear about the government bailing out the banks and not bailing out the people. Let me just show you this, because I think this is a significant moment in time where the government has put money on the line to help households. No longer can we say, and I know this may ruffle people's feathers, but no longer can we say that the government does not help citizens. Yes, they do. Just have a look at this. So it says here, from September 2007 to December 2009, the then Labour government made a number of interventions to support the banking sector generally and several banks specifically. It injected 137 billion of public money in loans and capital to stabilize the financial system, most of which has been recouped over the years. 137 billion pounds was the cost of the bailout to the banks in 2007, 2008. What we are witnessing today is a £100 bailout minimum, possibly going up to 150 billion pounds to help households here in the UK. Our system isn't perfect, right? And I have the benefit of living in different countries and having a very, very different upbringing for part of my life, even though I am here from the UK, where you go to other countries, and I was speaking to someone about this morning, was like, it's amazing. It's amazing that this even happens, right? But there are a lot of countries in the world where you would get no help whatsoever. So I know there will be a lot of people who are still going to be complaining and fighting the political battles that Labour would have done this and Lib Dem would have done that. I think we should just dispense with all of that nonsense for the time being. We have an intervention that is going to help people tangibly for the next 2 years. That's the takeaway from today. And it is a bold, bold move. And I'm not talking, I'm supporting Tory here, but it is a bold move we should all be very, 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 very welcoming of. And people will complain, yeah, the wealthy people are still going to get it. Like I said, it's not a perfect solution, but everyone is going to benefit from that. And that is the most important thing. I've just seen here Ghostface saying the Queen is dead, has died. I was listening to LBC this morning. They were saying that a note was passed around in Parliament saying that she was in ill health. And I thought to myself, there must be a little bit more to it than that. I haven't followed the news on that. Geez. Okay. What a sad note to end on, eh? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know what you think. It isn't the perfect solution, but there we go. Catch you later on, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.